So one of the big questions that Nancy and I get asked often is, I know I need to be posting on LinkedIn, but I don't know actually what to post on LinkedIn. Do I post the stuff that I post like I do on Instagram, or do I just reshare content from YouTube or Facebook or whatever the case may be? And we really wanted to kind of make sure that everyone understood if you're a coach, if you're a consultant, you're a service professional, entrepreneur, business owner, what kind of content you actually need to be posting on LinkedIn that is going to land the right way, goes with what the algorithm wants, and is going to get you the visibility that you deserve. And there are four types of posts that we're going to kind of cover with you today. But before we do, Nancy and I talked about this before, but we've created what we call the LinkedIn Thought Leadership Scorecard. And LinkedIn really wants thought leaders to be on the platform, optimizing their profile the right way, producing the right type of content, building the right types of networks. But a lot of people don't know where they stand on that thought leadership scale. So we've created this 3-minute quiz assessment, whatever you want to call it, to see where you are on this thought leadership scale. And if you're watching on social, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, or LinkedIn, and you would like to take it, it's completely free. Just type me, ME in the comments, and we'll send you the link so you can take this LinkedIn scorecard assessment. If you're listening on the podcast, it's even easier. The description of this episode is going to have the link right there. It takes about 3 minutes, and it's going to make you feel a lot better. It's not going to make you feel worse because even if your thought leadership score is low, it's actually going to reveal what you need to focus on to raise that thought leadership score. So, as far as content goes, there's four types of posts that we encourage people to create on LinkedIn. I'm going to cover the first two, and Nancy's going to cover the last two, just to kind of streamline this training in this episode for you guys. So the first type of LinkedIn post is what we call a teaching post. Now, this could be done in whatever format you like. And again, there's different types of content creators on LinkedIn. There's people that like to teach through video, which I love to do. There's people that like to teach through carousel posts, or they like to teach through just image text post or text only, or articles or newsletters. But here's the key. You want to be able to, when you're teaching, you need to make the content practical in the sense that people can actually digest it. It's not too high level where it's going to confuse your audience and they're going to be left scratching their head. You want them to, after consuming that piece of content, you want them to be able to just hit the ground and running. But the other thing that you can do is you can kind of lump in maybe steps that you've taken or a step in your process that has allowed you to figure out what you figured out so other people can obviously go down that path as well. But also highlighting mistakes that you made, lessons that you learned, but also even posing a question to your audience to make them think because Nancy talks about this all the time that you can't see the label from inside the jar. And so many of us are just so in the weeds of working on our business. Sometimes we can't really focus on maybe some of the glaring aspects of our business that we need to improve. The other thing that, and LinkedIn has openly said this, when it comes to teaching content on LinkedIn, and I put that in air quotes because teaching types of content, you need to be specific rather than broad. And here's why. LinkedIn, the way the algorithm is set up, it shows your content not just to your first connections and your followers, but your second, third, and beyond if your content is specific because they look for people that are already consuming and engaging with said topics that you're mentioning in your content. If you keep it too broad, they're not going to know who to send it to, so it's going to literally just fall flat. So if you're going to do teaching style, which we recommend, make sure it's specific. And the one thing, like just to give you an example, um, a question that you could pose to your audience is something like, what do your clients frequently get wrong during their first 30 days of, said system or process or program. And I'll give you another example. I posed a question to my audience earlier in the week about, how often do you engage in LinkedIn groups for market research? And that is something that I am genuinely curious about because that market research can lead to a teaching lesson for me. So you better believe that my newsletter edition is going to be about teaching people the frequency of how often they should be engaging in LinkedIn groups, why they need to be engaging in LinkedIn groups. So teaching style of content, especially if you're a coach, a consultant, and service professional, is ideal. The second of the four is what we call a quote unquote tell type of post. So this is where you can kind of unpack things where you're sharing a client lesson, something that a client learned from you. It could be a personal experience that you had. It could be just a moment from your work where maybe you faced a challenge, excuse me, or an obstacle that you had to overcome. And this is good because it allows you to be relatable. This is something that Nancy and I talk about all the time, that you want to build know, like, and trust. And the way that you build know, like, and trust is by relating yourself to your audience. And when you share lessons from yourself or a client or a personal experience that you had either working with someone or for someone, or a moment from your work week, that creates relatability. And the idea is, again, keeping it so simple that no matter where that person is in their personal journey, they can relate to it, share what happened, what changed in that moment, and what others can learn from that. Nancy and I always tell people that some of the best coaches are the ones that share their experiences and their pitfalls and their mistakes and what they did to improve them to help other people not make the same mistakes that they did. And Nancy and I kind of pride ourselves on that. We like making the mistakes for our clients so they don't have to, so they don't have to waste their time, and they can obviously increase the revenue that way. So an example of this could be, what did you believe early in your career that you no longer believe? Now, if I was to answer that question, is back in the day with LinkedIn, is it was the whole quantity over quality where people were kind of racing to 30,000 connections and they were just, DMing people left and right nonstop. And that's completely opposite now. That is what I thought. What I know to be true now, it is the opposite. It is quality over quantity. It is having hyper focus, not just content, but hyper focused connections on LinkedIn, making sure your messaging is clear, not just in your content, but your direct messaging and building relationships. So, again, the first two, teaching content and telling content. Nance, what are the last two that we're going to talk about?
Yeah, the last two that we're going to talk about, and again, we're kind of breaking it this way, which just so you guys know, in our Expert Content Society, we actually teach you, how to go a little bit deeper, which, we focus on growth, authority, conversion type posts, and personal, right? How to share your story. But we think, just kind of explaining it this way, right, is a lot simpler. So Scott already went over the teach and the tell, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit about the next two. And the next one is ask. Okay. So specifically around using polls, LinkedIn gives us the ability to post LinkedIn polls. And this isn't just simply dropping a question and, some, responses or whatever in there. There's a whole separate feature, on LinkedIn where when you click to go to make a post, you click the little plus sign. And then there's a little bar graph. You click on that and you can actually create a poll. And you want to use questions to invite your audience into a conversation, right? A lot of times, people kind of overthink the polls and they think it's got to be some difficult, long, question. But really, sometimes creating a simple poll with a simple question, even with a yes or no or other, we always do recommend that the fourth one or the last option is other. Comment below, right? So that it does create some conversation. And the thing is their answers can give you ideas for future content. In fact, we've seen people who have actually posted polls, gotten a ton of response, and it's actually inspired other your posts, such as newsletters or different formats, or even jumping on a video and going, oh my goodness, guys, I just posted this poll last week and I was really shocked, with the results. So it is really, really good to create polls and to ask questions so that you can engage with your audience. Okay. The fourth one that we're going to talk about is taking a stand. Okay, this is actually sharing your point of view about an industry. We know that the algorithm right now really loves to identify experts in their space, right? People who know what they're talking about. They talk consistently about topics. It's very clear what it is that you do. But when you're able to take a stand, especially about certain things going on in your industry, maybe it's something that's been popping up lately. It's a hot topic. Maybe people feel like, oh, there's a lot of things flying around, about a particular, topic in that industry. Well, it's great opportunity for you to step up as a thought leader and to share your thoughts on it. Maybe it's something you completely disagree with and you want to explain why. Maybe it's something that you really like and you agree with and you want people to fully embrace it. But the thing is when you share your genuine point of view about things in your industry, that is where people go, I really like their, thought on that. I'm going to follow them. So that's actually where the growth content comes into play. So those four, right, different types of content are really, really good places to start if you're just trying to come up with ideas. In fact, even simply going through and writing down ideas for topics, just like Scott said earlier around the teach posts, right? Think about what are some common questions that your audience asks? What do they want to learn more about? What are the teaching topics that you can share as it pertains to your business and your audience? Guys, you could literally, I love the good old-fashioned piece of paper. You could just write teach and then write a bunch of ideas of different things that you can teach on. Tell stories, okay? All stories, core values, everything that relates back to your business and how you can talk about your industry and your business and personal experiences, because that builds know, like, and trust. Ask, write a bunch of questions. What are the questions you really want to know from your audience? Again, years ago, I actually posted, and this is whenever I used to help people build sales funnels. I asked, how many of you have a sales funnel? Or do you have a sales funnel? And it was yes, no, other comment below. I actually had several people write other comment below. Then they commented below and they said, I have no idea where to start. I need help with this. That is a perfect conversation door opener. Okay. It was easy, easy, easy to take that conversation into a message and onto a call. So again, the polls can be really, really effective, and asking those right questions can be so informational about learning about your audience. So again, my recommendation, our recommendation would be, just to go through and write down some ideas for each. Okay.
Okay. So
Stop.
again, before we sign off today and end this training and end this episode, if you would like to take our thought leadership scorecard assessment, it takes about 3 minutes. It's going to really tell you where the holes and gaps are in some of the things that you're focusing on LinkedIn. If you're watching on social, Facebook, YouTube, or LinkedIn, just type the word me in the comments and we'll send you the link where you can then obviously take this assessment. If you're listening on the podcast, just go to the description, grab the link there, take it 3 minutes, and it's going to get you on the right path. So everyone, we hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please reach out to us if you need any help, you want to give us any feedback, any future episodes you'd like us to cover. We'd be happy to hear from you. So love and gratitude. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you next time.
Bye.